My name is Jacob Diaz. I started working for the cartels when I was 18 years old. I helped smuggle drugs and money between the United States and Mexico for 7 years. This is how crime works. The adrenaline rush of getting away with something, it's like a world in its own. It blocked out everything else. You're on high alert because one simple, stupid mistake could make all the walls crumble. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It turned me into an ugly person inside. It was a downward spiral. I got in accidentally, started at 18 in Ocala, Florida, which is a super small town. It's in Central Florida, and not knowing anything, just very naive, and eventually worked my way to getting arrested at the age of 25. I wore many hats inside the cartel. I was a translator for a majority of the part. Because I could translate, doors opened up to recruiting and facilitating shipments that would come in, getting houses around the city, stash houses, as far as bringing back the money for the cartel. I always sent someone else from Ocala to the border into Mexico. We would have somebody bring it down to the border and have somebody from the cartel pick it up and then bring that over across the border for them. It would typically be around $250,000 to $300,000 in one shipment. Once I wasn't able to find someone that can take it back to Mexico, I had a girlfriend at the time. I had like a little over $30,000 in cash on me, and I took her. I said, "Hey, come with me to Mexico." She had no idea what was going on. At least that's what I thought. At this point, my confidence level was through the roof. I felt bulletproof, and I made a brave decision to smuggle it through the airport, having it strapped to me. So I went into the Hyatt in Orlando airport, and I stayed a night in there, and we would go over the procedure of being checked by the TSA. I would go out and about and watch their schedule when they clocked in and clocked out, the shifts, and I noticed that the TSA would get mad throughout the day, and it was very important for you to catch them before they got pissed off from someone. So as soon as their shift started, is when I would make my way to go to the gate. I put a few $1,000s in her purse, but I kept the majority on me, and it was just all one by one wrapped around. And as soon as I went through the TSA, my heart dropped because the TSA patted me down, and he touched every single stack that was around my waist. He went like this and touched them. And my stomach went inside to kind of make it like where he wouldn't be able to feel it, but he touched every single one, went down, and just told me to go. And I thought he was setting me up by saying that, and I stood there froze. I was frozen. I didn't want to move, and I looked back, and then I see her give me the eye like go. So I was like, oh, I woke up, and I just went forward with it. I didn't have any instance where money was lost, thank God. The threat of violence there was no need to have that, because in the back of your mind, you knew that was the last resort. If anything was to happen, it would be that. It would be violence. The only drugs that were brought in was cocaine. The drugs, like where they originally come from, I mean, it could be anywhere. Colombia, Peru. All I cared about was as if it was ready to cross the border, to pick up, because we were the first persons to touch it once it came over. My part was to arrange the transportation. I would have to find the driver. If it was gonna be a 3-day deal, 4-day deal, 1-day deal, I would get him set up for that, pay for his gas, his hotel, everything he needed. The recruitment process for these drivers, the best way is word of mouth. You usually get recommended reference, like you're going for a job, and your resume. So can I contact your previous employer? And like that. And then it'll be recommended by someone that you know that's well established, who isn't doing it anymore, and they're just passing it on to you. For me, I think the best people to have is people who don't look the part. Take, for example, myself. I don't look the part. I don't even act the part, but I could play the part. There would be times where it'd be a family, a mother, wife, and the kids. It would be an older man, always people with clean backgrounds, clean records. For one example that we had happen is a family came over from Texas, and We just put them into the Disney resort for the weekend until we was able to send them back to Mexico with the money that they needed. So when they came back to Texas, they looked like they went on a vacation, which they really did, but it's a lot better when you have a bunch of Disney bags all in the vehicle and kids, and they got these toys from the parks and t-shirts, and it's makes your story a little bit more believable. So that kind of cover stories is very important because they're looking for things for you to be nervous of. Because if they ask you where are you coming from or where you're going, they don't listen to you as much as they watch you. They see how you respond to it. If you're nervous, they see, your eyes jittery or all kind of things they look for along with your response. I did keep a lot of people in rotation as far as to keep it fresh. I stuck with the same ones. A lot of times they like to use dummy trips where someone would get caught, will attract all the attention so other cars could pass by. So they might get caught with small amount, nothing, but it's just enough to draw attention because you're at the border or close by it. Even if you have nothing, it could be a hidden compartment, which is illegal to have. So they got to confiscate your car. When you do things like that, you can have other people come around that, and that's the shipments that's going to be coming in. So once they come in, they come across the border into Texas, they go to a safe house waiting for the person to come pick it up. Depending on the vehicle, you can fit up to, as much as you want. I've seen as much as 50 keys in a Volkswagen Jetta. Like a Toyota Tacoma, you can fit 20 keys. You can fit 10 in the dash in the AC, and you can fit 10 more underneath the back seat. You can put another stash spot, 10, maybe 20 more. There's a hidden compartment under the back seat. Like you can have extra gas tanks. Like you see a lot of trucks with gas nozzles in the back. Yeah, a lot of times those are false compartments. There's no gas in there. The driver would typically make anywhere between $900 to $1,000 to $1,100 per key to every one that they brought back. And it would be about 20, 30 every trip. In order to plan the best route, you have to wait for the call from the other side. Okay, it's ready for pickup. Then the route's basically the same. If you're going out to the border, you could, from Florida, you could stop in Houston or whatever to stay the night. But it's better to go straight down and then sleep a few nights down there at the border to come back up. You don't want to go there and come back. Even if you stay for a few days, it still looks suspicious because you have a Florida tag down at the border. But it looks better if you're old retiree, just cruising beautiful United States, sightseeing. If you bring a younger group, like college students, won't be able to make it down there like that. What are they doing down there? Partying? And now they're gonna want to ask how much drinks you had, and then it just keeps going. 3 months before I got arrested, one of the drivers was coming back up from the border with nothing, but they had to go down there to get a new compartment installed in their truck. And once they came up, there's 2 checkpoints on the way up. So they got caught in one of the checkpoints. And I know the way he is, if he was to get pulled over, he snaps back at any law enforcement or any authority. He doesn't give a fuck about him. So when they put his truck through the x-ray, they confiscated his truck because it had a hidden compartment in it. And then he called me at that time. He called me, he's on the phone with me, yelling, screaming. Now he's f***ed, and I'm thinking, now I'm never gonna now I'll never see him again. Now I'm never gonna hear from him again, because I don't know what's gonna happen to him. I broke one of my phones, and I told him, I said, just break your phone and we'll worry about it later. But that was the last time I saw him. To my knowledge, he's never done any time, and he's never been caught. Luckily, there was never any shipments gone missing. Once the drugs make it into Florida, they will get distributed according to street dealers that distribute throughout Central Florida, North Florida, some South Florida too. Again, these are people that have good references, very well trusted when it comes to the business aspect. How many can you move, how fast, and at what price? Once everybody comes together on those 3 things, then you have a match. On average, it would be about 20, 30 keys at a time, including losses, or if you had to give discounts. I'll say 4,000 off each one. It'd be easily 20, 30 to 50,000 a week, just on average. I usually went ahead and did the collections myself. Every single trip I took, I was always nervous. I didn't stop at a stop sign long enough. I ran through a yellow light or anything the officer didn't like. You could just find a reason to pull somebody over. And it wouldn't be so much as I'm delivering the product, it would be I'm bringing the cash. I would always have the cash on me. You don't stay in the same house as you stash your stuff at, obviously, because if the door gets kicked in, you're the one they're gonna point their finger to. So you would hire someone to stay in that house, and that'd be their only job, was to stay there. All they do is live there and make it look like someone lives there. Cut the yard, have toys in the yard, even if there's no kids, and that'd be their only job. And they'd get paid every week, a few $100s, live rent-free, and just do whatever they want. But they couldn't bring anybody over. It'd be like on 6 to 9 months, you have to do that. So growing up in Ocala, Florida, grew up on dirt roads. Growing up, I never gave up on being able to obtain these kind of things that were material, but I wanted to have something. Right around the time where I was graduating is when I met a guy and I was involved in drug trafficking. I wasn't gonna go to college. I wasn't gonna do any of the stuff that I thought was right. I was homeless. So he took me under his wing. These 2 kids in a neighborhood, apparently they told him, that's their uncle, they told him that they had someone who can drive. Now, mind you, I was still in foster care, and once I was introduced to him, he took me out, basically wine and dine me, just to get to know me. He said, "Hey, how long are you gonna stay here?" And I said, "Once you turn 18, they kick you out. Do you wanna stay with me? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do what I do. I'll pay for your school. I'll pay for you to go to college," all that good stuff. I guess he saw my potential into doing something good for myself, and just wanted to push that, be a father figure. It didn't help that his other side was doing something illegal. Once I finally moved in, what we would do on a daily basis is just go to the movies, go shopping, just be out and about. I didn't question. I didn't know if it was big, small, whatever. I just knew that he always had money and he always gave me money. I didn't think anything of it. And one day, coming back from the movies on the way back to the house, he goes, "Hey, I need you to stop at someone's house for me real quick, and I'm going and come back out." Once we got there, about 2 minutes later, he came out with a Walmart bag tucked under his arm and came in a car. I didn't look, I didn't care. I was just, okay, whatever. So we got back to the house. He went in the room, closed the door. About a few minutes later, he calls me and says, "Hey, can you help me?" And I'm thinking, help with laundry or move a bed or move, something you need 2 people for. "No, I need you to help me count money." And I'm like, "Help you count money?" And he dumped out the Walmart bag, and I just seen piles of cash. The most cash I've ever seen in my life, probably like 60, 70,000. Once I saw the money, I wasn't quick to say it was all drugs, because I'd never seen drugs. There was never drugs in the house, never. Maybe a week later is when I put 2 and 2 together. There was a guy that came in from out of state to pick up that money. By the same time, he left kilos of coke. So it was 4 of us at that time. And I was a little kid, everybody's, older, 30s, 40s, whatever. So in the beginning, I was just a driver. I was exposed to the operations, logistics, how to talk on the phone. Once I became familiar with a lot of the roles, the other 2 guys that he was working with, they started to diminish. They weren't no longer needed because I started taking their jobs. When he told me to do something, it was like, yeah, I was waiting all day for you to say that. And let's go. 13-hour shifts, driving a lot, doing a lot. There was most definitely something that wanting a better life for myself. It also helped me distract myself from the realities of life, almost like a drug. Although I wasn't getting all the money at that time, I was benefiting from the money. The way I looked at him was as a father figure, and he looked at me as a son. I didn't think about him doing any harm to me, because he always he tried to keep me away from it. I was the one that pursued it. I was going against what he was wanting for me. At the time, as being young and ambitious, you're fearless of a lot of things. You're naive to a lot of things. It could be good or bad. My first time going to Mexico was just solely based on what I wanted to do as a child. Just wanted to get to know that country. Being Mexican is what I always wanted to do. My first time going, I drove from Ocala to the border and into Mexico. That was my first time going. Part of that first trip I did, I was able to meet my mentor, the father figure's family. They all welcomed me. But the hospitality was, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. I never experienced as much love in my life from complete strangers, but who knew so much about me without even meeting me. Part of the reason of going back and forth to Mexico was basically for pleasure, for my leisure, just to have fun, go out with friends I had down there, and just the lifestyle that I had down there. But it soon turned into me moving down there. I ended up living there for 7 years. The areas I would frequent was Acapulco, Cuernavaca, Mexico City. Mexican culture is different. I was being treated like a king. I had everything on a silver platter. Everywhere I went, I was on a red carpet. I was dating very important people. I was in circles with very powerful people. In the United States, the whole time, I couldn't go out. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drive a nice car or whatever I wanted to do. I couldn't show signs of money. The clubbing lifestyle in Mexico is one of the best experiences I've ever had. It was the one moment that I didn't think about the things that I've done, almost like an escape. It was a very, I guess, a bad escape, because I did it 6 days out of the week for months on end, sun up to sundown. I set a age that I was gonna stop so I could settle down, get married, have kids, just go and live, a normal life, a clean life. And that day never came. During that time is when it was probably one of Mexico's worst times when it came to drug wars. 2007, 2010, that time period was some of the most bloodiest times Mexico's ever seen. And it was a lot of up-and-coming cartels that branched off from the main cartels and wanted to come up with their own. A lot of it was turf wars. A lot of it was wanting people to take over the territory. Being exposed to the violence in Mexico was very real. It's very different from seeing on TV and hearing about it from other people. I remember the first time I experienced it was going down the street, and I seen a body hung with a note on their chest. Those kind of things were very normal there. I seen it on more than one occasion. There would be banners and signs across bridges from rivals telling the other side to get out or you're gonna have to pay the consequences. Knowing that no matter how big and powerful you were, there's always someone bigger than you. Seeing people who I thought would never have anything happen to them get something done. Even me, myself, I never thought I was gonna be arrested. It was a time in Acapulco where it was announced on the radio, and this is how wide open it is. It was announced on radio to say, it was a message from the cartel to say you cannot go outside your house past 9 o'clock at night if you have a red, white, or black vehicle, because then they're gonna look at you as the other side, and then they're gonna shoot at you, kill you. And even though that message was being sent, I would still go out in a black vehicle by myself. That's how, I guess, ignorant I was. Just not, I felt like nothing was ever gonna happen to me. When I would witness this violence, I would pacify myself with alcohol, money, and living, getting that rush from that lifestyle where I could distract myself, saying that it only happens to people who deserve it. That's what I told myself. I said, there's a reason why he died. They don't go after innocent people. And as long as you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't have nothing to worry about. And that was the core belief. In 2008, I had a traffic stop. I went for a beer run to go get beer before 2 o'clock hit, because that's when they stopped selling alcohol in Florida. I was a sheriff. You could barely see him, that's how far he was. And I didn't know he was a sheriff until the lights hit. I knew it was for me because I was the only car on the road, and it was a little over 2 in the morning. Now, mind you, the whole time I had about $300,000 in cash on me that I needed to get away from. And this wasn't my money, this was cartel money. And so I was with a buddy of mine. I'm known for running from the cops. I never stopped for a cop. So he looked at me, he goes, "Don't do it." And I looked to him and I said, "It's too late." So as soon as I put it into park, it unlocks. And it was a sound of the horses when you open up for the gate. That's what it reminded me of. The doors open and I just ran. I ran and all I could hear was keys in the background. And I could slowly hear them getting further and further away. And that's when I looked back and I didn't see anybody. Luckily, I found a patch of woods and I was able to throw the backpack as far as I could. And I went the other way, opposite way. I went into a yard that was an Ecoline van in the driveway. I laid down under it flat, freezing cold, and I could hear the helicopters coming closer, and then I hear a canine coming closer. And I was so close to the canine that I could hear the canine breathing. And luckily the canine kept going, and once I stopped hearing the sirens and the helicopter and all that, I got up, just walked, and I walked down the street. About 10 minutes later, a cop car comes up and he asked me, he goes, "Hey, are you the guy we're looking for?" And by that time, it was okay for me to turn myself in because the car was in my name, my passport was in the car. So I turned myself in and I was able to get just 4 months for running from the cops and driving on suspended license. The cartel knew exactly what happened with my situation, and I was able to relay a message saying that the money is in a safe place, which I had no idea it was. It was just me saying what I had to say, needed to say in order for everybody to be cool. But once I was able to get out, I was able to get the cash back. The backpack was still there, covered in mildew. A few days before I was released from the county jail, I got on the county phone and ordered me a one-way ticket back to Mexico. So that way when I got out, I was able to just go to the airport and just go to Mexico. And I had that money sent by car. A lot of the things that were happening at that time did play a major part in me feeling invisible, just by me every single time getting away with something that I believe no one would ever get away with. No one would want to run from the cops on foot with a bunch of money and a helicopter and escape canines. Why would you want to put yourself through all that? But I did. I would do that because I wouldn't stop. Prior of me getting arrested, one of the dealers got arrested. His brother was in jail. The other brother wasn't. I went ahead and started trying to collect money from one of the brothers, one of the dealers. Let's try to get as much money from him as we could, knowing that we're not going to get all of it, but as much as we could to leave, to move. Every time I went to go see him, it was always, give me a few days, give me a few days. There was always something to buy time. And I told him, I said, "Hey, if I don't get this money, I'm not coming back. I'm going to send the people who it belongs to, and they're not going to come to you the way I come to you. And they know where your kids go to school at. They know where everybody where everybody lives at." He just turned white. I could see the life leave him. His spirit left his body. And that's when the investigation started, because the whole time I was unaware that he was wearing a wire and he had a camera. There was unmarked cars far away. It was an investigation that was very short, few weeks. And it was basically all they needed to get a conspiracy charge. Shortly after that is when they kicked in my door. They pulled out the assault rifles and they asked me what my name was. I said, "My name is Jacob Diaz." And they go, "Oh, we have a warrant for your arrest." I said, "For what?" They said, "For drug trafficking." I only had one charge. I was charged with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute 5 or more kilos of cocaine. I was offered a plea deal. Of course, you had to tell on everybody. My attorney told me if I was to cooperate, that I would get 5 years. And I told him I can't do that. And then they wanted to give me an offer. They wanted me to sign to 16 years. like it was nothing. In my mind, I said, if I can do 16, I can do 17. If I can do 17, I can do 18. I just kept going up from there. And I said, let's just go to trial. And I ended up beating them out of that 16 years. I ended up getting sentenced to 10. I was able to get that 10-year sentence basically from the judge looking at, they call a PS, it's called a PSR, pre-sentencing report. They base your sentence everything from your childhood, how you're brought up, and your past. If you're a troublemaker, everything. At sentencing, my judge started crying because she said that I didn't deserve the 10 years because of my childhood. She said that I was destined for prison. She couldn't go under the 10-year mandatory minimum because I didn't cooperate. It took me a minute to process that I'm gonna be doing 10 years in federal prison. Once I finally arrived to federal prison, I was under the impression that, just like you see in the movies, especially based off the way I look, I don't look tough and I don't look mean or intimidating. So I knew eventually I was gonna run into someone who thought the same thing, and I had to prove them wrong. That day did come, and that's how I got into a fight with someone. They said that I was a rat. I don't like to be violent. I'm not like that anymore. But while I was in prison, I had to continue that role because of the way I look. People take advantage of you. Every prison I would go to, they would transfer me and I had to restart. And I hated transferring because I had to keep going and it's like, oh, I gotta fight somebody else again. Once I got into my first fight, I was transferred from Pensacola. They transferred me 9 months. It took 9 months to get from one prison to another prison. And they do that on purpose. It's called diesel therapy. They try to break you. Because in part of the whole point of prison is you wanna be comfortable so where you can do your time and your time goes by fast in your head, it's smoothly. So if you can't get comfortable and you can't, your time sucks. You're just always in the air. They would take me from Atlanta transit to Oklahoma transit to Louisiana transit and just bounce around, and finally ended up in Ohio at Elkton. And that's where I ended up doing the first 3.5 years. I told myself I was never gonna get into another fight again.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I got into another fight on a soccer field. Somebody headbutted me and then almost started a race war. I was able to move back to Florida after that fight because I didn't get written up for it, so no one found out about it, and it stayed off my record. I ended up being transferred in 2015, late 2015. Ended up going to Coleman Low for the drug program, the RDAP, and that's where I was able to complete it. After being in prison for about 5 years, I kind of accepted the fact that I was in prison, so I settled down and matured and started getting into things where I can reinvent myself. Just wanted to focus on things I didn't like about myself that I can change. And since I can change them, then I could be like a 2.0, like a better version of myself. I was eventually released in September 2018 from prison, was sent to the halfway house, did a halfway house for 1 year and 5 years of supervised release. Transitioning from one lifestyle to another lifestyle is super difficult. For one is, if I hear keys, I automatically think there's a correctional officer nearby. I like to have my back up against the wall. I don't like my back exposed to people. Waking up in cold sweats, waking up in nightmares or screaming. I still do that. Things that you can't tell people, and that's what hurts because you have no one to relate to. It is isolating, especially when you have a felony and you, for the first time, get a 9 to 5. First time having a job was when I got out, and I didn't know how to conduct myself professionally in a workplace. I do feel the struggle still to this day after being released. There's moments where you want to give up, that you don't care. I just cut off a lot of access from people. I just kind of stay to myself. After I was released from prison, I was able to start my business, My Credit Builder Pros. The reason why helping people with credit is very important to me is because it all boils down to financial literacy. For me, it was knowing that if my mom had those resources, she probably wouldn't have put us in those predicaments like going through extreme poverty. I believe that if more families and more communities have access to that, it will reduce a lot of the kids getting into mischief, or because they can have, now they can go out and have activities, and our parents can put them into other things that could get them out of trouble, like sports or just any kind of activity to keep the kid busy, or video games or whatever. I didn't have any of that stuff. I know if I did, then it probably wouldn't have came out the same way that it did. But it's important to me to help communities build their credit, because that's, to me, it's the root. I reflect on my past with working with the cartels and the underworld and all that stuff as a learning lesson, a stepping stone. I don't beat myself up over it. I forgive the kid that did it. Well, I didn't have emotions, and now I do. When that's all you know, is it's hard to not be that way, because it's what kept you safe. Of course, having all that money and stuff is fun, but I mean, if you don't know who you are and you don't deal with your issues and your problems, I always say, like, I forgive that child. He didn't want that. He didn't want none of that stuff. But I'm just happy to do it my way, and without anybody taking credit for it. Being able to grow from when you have your back up against the wall, like everything's against you from birth. I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania. I moved down to Florida when I was 6 with 2 of my brothers, my sister, and my mom, growing up in a single parent home. I can't imagine how tough it would be on the parent. We're trying to raise 4 kids. Going to school, I'd see kids with, nice clothes and nice shoes, and I had holes in my shoes. My mother couldn't afford it. When I was in middle school, one of the things I would do as a hustle to get money was I would go to the gas station on the corner, and I would steal boxes of juicy fruit, or I would steal a whole box of those and go to school and sell them for $1 a piece, come back and give it to my mom. Around the time that my mother left, I was the only kid in the house. My mother would go out on the weekends. My mother wasn't a drinker. She didn't do any drugs. One Sunday, I'm expecting for her to come back because I see all her friends came back that she left with on Friday, and I'm waiting. So I go to school the next day. I come back, she still hasn't showed up. So I go to her friends and I say, hey, do you know where my mother's at? And they're like, no, she stayed with some guy and she's down some city or whatever they went to that weekend. And I was like, okay. So I continued going to school. And then it was about the time where we had to pay rent. So the landlord came, she told me to leave. So that's when I really became homeless. I didn't have anywhere to go or nothing. I would sneak into my friend's bedroom window without their parents knowing, and I would sleep either on the side of their bed, hidden, or under their bed. And I would leave whenever they got to wake up for school the next day. My day would be hanging out in the streets, hustling, and at night I would do stuff to be a kid. How I was introduced to selling weed was just being around people who sold weed. And they didn't teach me how to do it, I watched. And I didn't think anything about I was gonna be taken advantage of. None of that came to my mind. All I saw was money. A good week for me would be if I didn't need any food anymore and I was able to buy a pair of shoes or clothes, so a few $100 a week, 13, 14 years old, 15, it's not bad. I was able to run into one of the social workers for the state of Florida. It's called DCF, Department of Children and Families. He eventually found me. I was like 16 at this time. He said, we've been looking for you for a few years, and we have your younger brother, which my younger brother was at a group home. I turned myself into foster care around like sophomore year. However, I didn't like school. I was never the kid that had straight A's. I just want to graduate. I just want that piece of paper just to say I did it. And because I thought I was going to see my mom whenever I was able, like in the future, I thought I was going to see her and I could show her that I did it. I was really going to do it for her, not for me. I didn't care about school as much. So once I graduated and I realized that my mother wasn't in the stands and she wasn't there, a switch happened at that moment. I guess you could say I turned into a man. I just stopped being a kid and became very dark. It was shortly after that is when I became heavily involved in drugs on accident. Today, I don't have a good relationship with my mom. 6 months before I got arrested in 2011, I was with my older brother, and I didn't like the way he was living his life. He was abusing alcohol. He just had his second child. I didn't want him to go down that path of self-destruction. I said, what is it gonna take for you to stop drinking? And he told me, I just want my kids to have a grandma. I said, you know what? So if I find her, you're gonna stop drinking? He says, yeah. I said, okay. And in a few days, I found her. And she was working at a KFC for the past 10 years in the next county over. And that hurt me even more. I offered to take her out to dinner. I said, hey, I'm gonna take you out Friday. We're gonna go out to eat. And once I took her out, I said, let me ask you a question. And I already know the answer to this, so don't lie. And I said, why did you leave us? Why did you leave me? And she goes, I felt like y'all didn't love me. And I said to her, that's the best answer you can come up with after all these years? I treated her like a stranger from then on out. I just went according to business, got her something to eat, and then dropped her back off. There was no talking after, texting, nothing. It was purely business. So my relationship with the guy, so my father figure, my mentor, is a lot better today than it was. I respect his time. I respect his advice, the way he's there for me, like nobody else is. So it's a lot better. I talk to him every day. The difference between drug trafficking back then when I did it to now, I don't understand it today. It's more wide open. It's social media involved. People post what drugs they're selling in their stories so everybody can see them. It's completely the complete opposite of what I know. The people who tell on people get more respect. And when you don't tell, they say you're stupid. So I've been called stupid. I've been called dumb for not cooperating. Law enforcement is still the same because they don't do their work. You know who does the work? People get caught. They do all the police work. The police don't know nothing until you talk. So where do they get their sources from? Confidential informants. They would never know I sold drugs until the dealer got busted. They feed off catching little guys to get to the big guy. That's how it works since the beginning of time. They know who's going to sell the drugs, people of color. Guess who has the higher sentencing? Drug charges. Like my drug charge was 10 to life for a nonviolent crime. I didn't get caught with 1 gram. Very little white collar criminals. And if they got white collar crimes, they got no sentence. 3-5 years, they go home. Drug charges, 20 years, 15. For a little piece of crack, I seen somebody with a 15-year sentence. Coke is still gonna be around. It's just now that you have more synthetic drugs that you can bring in cheaper, less overhead, like fentanyl or meth. You know, people are always gonna get the cheapest. They want the most bang for their buck. Fentanyl, I don't even know why it's around. That's bad for business because it's doing nothing but killing people. And how are you going to kill the people who's giving you money? So like, what are you doing? You see more people getting on drugs than off drugs. And when they get off drugs, it's only for a short amount of time they get back on it. So it's a never-ending cycle. It's a vicious cycle. People are not scared to have repercussions and consequences. They think because they're on the internet that nothing's going to happen to them. You got influencers now in Mexico dying just because they're making fun of cartels, and they're just kids doing bull. But that's just where it goes. People put on a front to be tough, and they're not. Everything's cool until the hits the fan, and I could tell you it's gonna hit the fan. It will hit the fan one way or another.
Hi, I'm a producer on How Crime Works. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe and comment below with more ideas of topics you'd like us to cover in this series.